Welcome to another segment of Live from the Forum. We're at Forum 22, powered by the National Association of Workforce Boards. I'm your host for the conversation, Ron Painter, and it's a pleasure for me to welcome Stephen Goldsmith.
Thank you.
I'm going to say mayor. I'm going to refer to you
I
as
like
a mayor.
mayor.
Well, having worked for a mayor, you're always the mayor of Indianapolis. You were the deputy mayor of New York City.
Right.
You're a professor now of urban policy, director of innovations at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government.
It's a mouthful, huh?
It is a mouthful, but it's. I think it's truly a recognition of the things that you did, not only in Indianapolis but in New York, but also the role of mayors in the country, and particularly the issues that we want to talk about. We're going to be talking about the book Growing Fairly. This is just recently out, right?
A few weeks.
Okay, and we're going to talk later about how to get a hold of it.
Oh, good.
But I wanted to ask you, what prompted the research that led into the book?
Well, as you've mentioned, I've worked with cities for a long time. Been a local official for maybe 30 years in all my various jobs. And then pre-COVID, we started thinking and looking at this income disparity issue that was facing cities. So when I first started as mayor, cities were in pretty bad shape. Then cities got to be really hot places, particularly the larger cities. People wanted to live downtown. But there were these gaps in income. So some people were doing a lot better and others weren't. So we started there. Then COVID hit, right? So we've been at this for 2 years interviewing people, trying to understand how we could produce, what are the best practices that would produce more opportunity for folks that would help them move up into better paying jobs. So that was the focus of the book, closing the income disparity by lifting up the bottom.
Is it your, I don't know whether it's opinion or is it your sense, again, having worked for a mayor, is it that mayors have a greater sense of urgency? I mean, we have these conversations about diversity, equity, inclusion nationally, but coming from being a mayor, do mayors have a different sense of urgency, a different perspective?
Well, I think obviously that mayor is the best job in America, and part of it is because
it's one of the toughest jobs in America.
It's a tough job, which makes it a good job. But I work with mayors now around the country at Harvard, right? And almost all of them are pragmatists. Their job is to get things done in their communities, right? And so they have a voice. People respect local government more than they do state or national government, and they have an ability to get things done. So it's being close to people, producing valuable services that makes the mayor a kind of a natural convener.
So it's that pragmatism. I've got to get this done. My city's got to move forward.
Right, it's pragmatism, and it's kind of the retail politics of seeing people who are hurting or need help. The problem in the area that you work in and are so expert in is that the mayors have a loud voice, but they don't have much authority and they don't have much money. The workforce board's over here, the community college is over here, the four-year college is over here, the nonprofits are over here. The mayor has a large voice, but not much else. So the question is, how do you put a system together?
One of the things that I found really interesting in the book, you talk about listen, respond, and get personal, and you lead that off by saying, what must someone believe to consider further education or training in the first place? Talk a little bit about this notion of listen, respond, and get personal.
So it was an interesting 2 years for us. We interviewed, the book is the voices of people, the people who work in workforce boards or nonprofits, the people who need their services, and we talked to more and more of them, and we looked at some survey research done by Strata. And basically, if you get close to folks, you understand they want to do better, but they don't have any confidence the system will actually work for them, right? A majority of people have no confidence that the next step is going to be a worthwhile step for them, right? And so you have to get close to them, you have to understand their context, you have to personalize the services. And that first step is a big one, and it often leads to failure. So we have to accept failure and then encourage that first step to lead to persistence, to lead to success. So that's what we really meant, and that's different things for different people. It's bridges, it's childcare, it's support, it's confidence, it's knowing that the training course will lead to a better job. It's a lot of things.
Do you see a critical role for the board to start tying together these various systems, as I would refer to them? Education, childcare, transportation, housing. Part of the responsibility or role of the board to tie that together?
Yeah, no, so I think that's the fundamental question, kind of the role of the board. It's got a big stake, it's got data, it's got some money, but all of the rest of this constellation of services are really outside the control of the board. So we suggested in the book, and I don't think it has to be the same model anywhere, but let's just look at the San Diego model perhaps, right, where the workforce board has a nonprofit associated with it. The authority of that nonprofit and the additional non-federal money allows it to be a convener. So we've suggested in the book, maybe the mayor uses her voice loudly to convene people from all those places. The board may, with it on its own or through its own nonprofit, kind of run a data platform that allows it to bring the parties together. Do we need more childcare? Do we need more transit? Do we need more executive skilling for people? So I think the board can play that role, but it actually needs the outspoken support of elected officials and philanthropists, foundations in that community to do it.
So as part of task one, connecting with and convincing elected officials how critical this is.
It is. I think we underappreciate, if that's the word, the challenges folks have to get to the first couple steps. We also fail to realize the importance of moving from a degree system to a skill-based system.
Yeah, you talk a lot in the book about, we talk about skill-based system, but it's going to be very hard to move everything in that direction.
It is, and you know, some of the workforce boards have sophisticated data, some have ONET data. I mean, how do we disaggregate how do we get the employers to advertise for skills, not just experience and not just degrees? How do we disaggregate the training into skill-based clusters and modules that have names and nomenclature that everybody can recognize, right? And then how do we create those paths? The workforce board is in a critical position to do that, but it does need help. I don't think it can do it by itself.
One of the other things that you mentioned in the book that you think is really critical is transparency. Talk a little bit about how you discovered that, or why you think it's so important.
For the last 10 years, I've been working with mayors about transparency and open data, but open data is really not transparent if it's not usable, right? So if you don't, just because you see that it's open doesn't mean anything. So let's go back up to the mom, young mom, 2 children, trying to decide how she can improve her wages, try to get to a living wage. How does she know what course to take? How does she know whether this course for 14 weeks will increase her income if she's successful by this much, right? So by transparency, we mean contextualized transparency that she can translate. Now, she may need a navigator, she may need a career coach, she may need advice from the workforce board, but how does she see that in a way that helps her make, and you know, free community college, for example, isn't really free to her. It may not be free in the sense it doesn't cost her tuition, but there's a lot she has to give up. She has an opportunity cost, she has to get there, she has to get her child to daycare. So I mean transparency by usable data that helps the person who's aspiring for a job and her coach or career navigator, if she has one, to help her make that decision.
And that comes back, or that's a significant part of the value proposition. Why would you take this course? How do you get started?
Right. So if 50% of that population in that position is not sure that doesn't think the step's going to make any difference to begin with, then the more tangible the information. Okay, you know, I'm a home health care specialist. If I become a licensed nurse, it'll take me this number of years or months, and this is what happens to my income. Right? Just very specific, clear stuff with program information. I mean, I know the workforce boards try to do this as well, which is get the data from the program, from the training programs about success rates, right? That's really important stuff.
I know we're pressed for time, but you in the book start talking about what you see as the role of the feds, the state, and the locals. Can you just quickly talk about what you think the key role is?
Well, first of all, a federal role, I think, is money. And I also think that that money needs to be delivered to the workforce boards and the communities much more flexibly. The cost of complying with those federal rules and the difficulty is just counterproductive.
Oh, how well we know that, Mr.
Right?
Mayor, yes.
So I think it's money and accountability, but more flexibility. The states need to play a supporting role of the local workforce boards, whether it's a data supporting role or combining the workforce with economic development initiatives so you can see the combined role. Locally, I think what the answer is, the local governments need to do a much better job of organizing the nonprofit supporting services and the community college and training partners in conjunction with the training. So it's arranging the resources, creating the flexibility, and then finally, the reason the workforce boards have so much of a challenge is because many of our neighborhoods don't work. So maybe the mayor could pay attention to getting those neighborhoods to work a little bit better, take a little less pressure off the workforce boards. And you're about to hold up the book and buy the book.
I am. I'm going to say I've not done justice to the research in the book, but how do I find the book?
Growing Fairly, look it up on Amazon. We're delighted to have you read it.
All right, it's been a pleasure to have you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate you stopping by.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. You've been tuned in to Live at Forum 2022 from Washington, D.C. I've been your host, Ron Painter, powered by the National Association of Workforce Boards, and it's been my pleasure to have what I call Mayor Stephen Goldsmith joining me for the conversation today. Thank you for joining, and I hope you tune in again for more conversation.